Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 2017 SB Nation College Football Preview presented by Xfinity Mobile. We've got a hell of a show for you. We've got all sorts of members from the SB Nation College Football team that are going to be in studio at these tables. We're going to play a game. You can see the pin the tail on the playoff. It's quite simple. It's very, very difficult to figure out teams. There it is. There you see it. It's very difficult to figure out playoff teams, and we're just going to blindfold our experts, and me, obviously, and we're going to just punch in and figure out. We have these four magnets. We're going to figure out who's going to make it to the playoff. We're each going to be assigned four teams, and that's a scientific way of going about our business. But first, though, how do we talk about 2017 without knowing what happened previously in college football? Check it out.
Previously on college football.
These guys took home hardware after beating these guys and really beat these guys. This guy took home personal hardware. These guys broke through and hey, ended a long drought. These guys got super fun and won the Big Ten before losing to these guys in the Rose Bowl in the best game of the year. These guys were very good, not Iowa good, but good. These guys took the Big 12 before this guy took an early retirement. None of the Power 5 guys in this state finished with a winning conference record. These guys finished with a win-loss record, still unclear what it was. These guys rode the boat all the way to an undefeated regular season and Cotton Bowl. These guys and these guys fell off a cliff. This guy, 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 and this guy all got the axe. And then this guy, who is in charge of a program again. This guy no longer has a job after making some phone calls. And most importantly of all, this guy won a hotly contested Heisman Trophy. See, wasn't that a good refresher? Wasn't that a good way to get caught up? And now, for something completely different, and we're gonna have our experts in here in a moment. We're gonna have Stephen Godfrey and Bud Elliott, of course, from SB Nation. But first, to talk about the SEC and make his predictions, it's the Ryan Nanni with his predictions for the 2017 SEC season. It's very serious. Check it out.
These are my predictions for the 2017 SEC season. Lane Kiffin will say he's flattered, but not considering an offer at an SEC school. This might not even be a school that would ever consider Lane Kiffin, or one that even has a job opening up. It doesn't matter to Lane, and it doesn't matter to the internet, which will just eat all of this up. Tennessee will beat Florida and Georgia, and it won't matter at all because they did that last year and they still didn't win the division. It could be a fantastic year for quarterbacks, especially in the SEC West. You've got Jarrett Stidham, Jalen Hurts, Nick Fitzgerald, Austin Allen. They could all have breakout years, and that means we're going to get a bunch of articles saying, oh, I told you SEC defenses aren't worth a damn. Nick Chubb needs a little over 1,800 yards this season. Ralph Webb will need a little over 1,900, but one of them is going to break Herschel Walker's SEC record for career rushing yards. Alabama's defense will allow more than 5 rushing touchdowns. That's what they allowed in all of last year, including the national championship game where Clemson got 2 of them. For the first time in 4 seasons, Texas A&M will not finish 8-5. I just have zero clue whether they're going to wind up above or below that number. Your SEC East champion, the Kentucky Wildcats. Why? That's the outcome that causes the most anguish and pain amongst the fans and message boards in this division. And after that, Mark Stoops is going to take the UCLA job because nobody can have nice things in the SEC East. By the end of the season, I will convince Auburn fans to throw donuts on the field every time a Tiger scores a rushing touchdown. Why? Because the running backs coach's name is Tim Horton. Tim Horton! And finally, this is the season Nick Saban just gets tired of recruiting and decides to take up his true passion, the harp.
Oh my goodness, look at these beautiful people. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Godfrey, Bud Elliott, you can see them. They're here. There they are. Oh my God, they're so beautiful. Wow, you guys are tan. You guys look happy. It's summertime. You guys are about to be inside for a long time. I have some bad news. So we're talking SEC, obviously, and I think the largest question at this moment, because the top of the conference is not a question, clearly. The biggest question here is how will quarterbacks sort of dictate, because the SEC has been down as it relates to quarterbacks, how will quarterbacks help to dictate how teams separate? I guess we'll start with you, Bud. How do you look at this roster of quarterbacks and how it'll define the season?
You know, I just think last year the quarterbacks were were not very good in this league. And this year, it's almost impossible to believe they won't be better, right? Name a team, and the thumb is going up.
Right.
Alabama's second year, Jalen Hurts. Auburn's going to be better. I think LSU's going to be better. Florida should be better. Georgia should be better. It's probably quicker.
Notice how he didn't say Tennessee?
Right. Okay, well, so Tennessee
okay, fair.
Tennessee's still not really sure what they're what they've got there. No, I think in the case of it's Alabama and everybody else, right? So
Yes.
LSU and Auburn defined by quarterback situations from completely different perspectives, right? If Stidham is functional, Auburn is automatically better. Etling marginally better.
And there's an unexpected element to Etling too with the new offensive coordinator.
And if they are creative at LSU and they do things around Etling, he's going to look better by proxy. And that's all they really need to do. It's not necessarily like 5 stars haven't really rolled in so much as it is. It couldn't get much worse for a power conference.
And there's upside even to the teams, and we'll take a look at this in a second, the teams at the bottom of the conference. So, and I'm not saying South Carolina's at the bottom of the conference because there's a lot of promise there, but they're still a little bit thin roster-wise. Jake Bentley, a ton of upside there. A really young dude. Kyle Shermer ended the season really well for Vanderbilt. Steven Johnson had some really nice moments for Kentucky.
Drew Lockett, Missouri.
Drew Lockett, Missouri put up...
Fitzgerald at Mississippi State.
Absolutely, Nick Fitzgerald looks to be just an all-around weapon. So even if your team struggles, there's a ton of upside. We didn't say A&M. Maybe that's a sort of question yet to be answered, we'll see with that. But more often than not, this is it seems like a conference that's going to be defined by promise at quarterback.
I think promise is the key word, though. I think that maybe we're talking about a class that could really shine. You could really put a stake on it, maybe 19 or 20.
Fair enough. But if you will do me a favor and stand up as we take a look, you're going to be our Vanna White, a natural Vanna, Bud Elliott.
Typecasting.
So no, to your left, Bud, we're gonna pop up the SEC power rankings if we can. They'll get up there in a second. Obviously, Alabama's going to be at the top. There we see Alabama. Any reason not to have Bama there? The concern, obviously, it seems, and Bud, you can speak to this, is they're basically working in a new defense up front.
They are. Yeah, they lost a lot of guys, but they still have Deshaun Hand. They have Deron Payne. They have Mac Evans, or Mac Wilson.
Yeah,
they have
Sean
Evans.
Hamilton,
They have so many guys in this defense that I think you have to look at and you say, all right, we know their talent because we saw.
Whoa! Look at that. Okay, let's give Bud that microphone.
All right.
All right.
We saw their talent because we know how athletic they are.
Right.
And we know how good a job Alabama does developing talent up front. But at the same time, there is that sort of newness question that we haven't seen answered yet.
Yeah, this is totally true. Let's take a look at the second tier. We should have out LSU and Auburn. Auburn, LSU in that order. But how do you feel about that specific order?
I feel like we need to just take and strike this and make it like tier 2.5.
Okay.
Tier 2 almost implies that they're actually that close to Alabama, and I don't think they are.
Okay.
Right? I mean, LSU has a question at quarterback. Auburn has questions, somewhat quarterback, but also some other spots on that roster.
Right.
When you look at tier 1, Bama, tier 2, it almost seems like they're nipping at their heels. I don't think anybody's nipping at Bama's heels in that league. I think there's a pretty clear delineation. But if you want to just put those two together as your next tier, sure, I think that makes a lot of sense.
These are the two potential losses, though.
Yes.
I don't know if my mic's working. We'll find out here in a second.
We will find out.
These are the two potential losses, at least in conference play. What's interesting, if you beat Florida State, you can take a loss before you go to Atlanta more than likely. So that's why, Alabama, talented beyond belief, right? 5 stars replacing 5 stars. The way that it sets up for them once they get out of Labor Day against Florida State, if they win that game, they've got the best path in the country to the national championship.
This is totally true. Defense wasn't a problem for Auburn last year, and wasn't a problem for LSU either. LSU brings back a lot of talent. Here's this middle class of the SEC.
Oh, boy.
Now we have Georgia atop because Georgia returns, looks like everybody on defense and a lot of really key pieces on offense. Obviously, quarterback, a big question. Florida is replacing a lot. Texas A&M has offensive question. Mississippi State, a new defense. Tennessee, overhauling their roster. A lot of interesting young talent. Kentucky, a lot of people like a lot. Yeah. And Arkansas, certainly nobody, I think, thinks huge things in terms of their ceiling, but they seem like they might be dangerous.
I feel like 6 through 10 interchangeable, and really any outcome there wouldn't surprise me. 4 and 5, we are probably betting on our assumptions here that they just have gotten a little calmer in both places, especially Georgia. They're starting to fit into the systems, but neither one of those teams really. It's hard to fall in love with them right now.
Right.
Can he coach at 4?
TBD.
And do they have a quarterback?
Yeah.
TBD.
Because those two questions are going to answer that. I'd also flip Arkansas and Kentucky here because Kentucky has had a really unfortunate offseason with players leaving the program and getting hurt. And that's obviously was made before Bill did these rankings. But other than that, list looks pretty spot on.
A&M, Tennessee, Kentucky, all fighting against perception that you could still have a catastrophic outcome and lose your coach by the end of the year.
Any of 6 to 10 that you could feel like could jump up to 4 or 5?
Ooh, wow. Tennessee.
Okay.
Tennessee, find a quarterback. Expectations are dramatically lower. You're playing in the East. Get out of week 1 against Georgia Tech, an option team, which is really not a great game to schedule. And then maybe you get a key game against South Carolina, beat Florida early. Yeah, it's
a lot of talent up front on defense. Khalil McKenzie might have a breakthrough year kind of thing. Okay, fair. And we'll look at the bottom. This doesn't mean these are bad teams. It just means they might not be as talented and as promising. Ole Miss having the offseason that they did. South Carolina, like we mentioned, thin, but a promising quarterback in Jake Bentley. Missouri, we need to see some sort of improvement on defense. And Vandy, we need some sort of offensive consistency.
It's hard to make a bold declaration here. Ole Miss, obviously, from a talent perspective, may not belong in this category, but they're probably 1 or 2 consecutive losses in conference play from this thing falling apart in an interim. So it's really impossible to put them in tier 3. But I mean, South Carolina's a work in progress. It's one of those teams, I think, but when we talk about them, we're just talking about 2020.
They're my 2018, 2019 team.
Yeah.
I feel like last year they arrived a little bit early. They may have been a little bit lucky. This year, if they take a step back, people will write them off. But I still think they're building something there, not like a national championship good, but consistently decent there. I look for them to have a 2018 bounce back if they do fall back.
It's quietly becoming a really good spot for Will Muschamp.
Yeah.
It's just we're not talking about it in the context of the national title picture right now or the conference, so we're just not really talking about it at all. But that job is getting better and better for him as we go along.
He's in a spot where he's given patience a little bit, and he will be able to recruit, and he'll be able to build and delegate the offense as much as possible.
Fast start's key for these guys.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And let's go with Bud first for this beautiful eye mask.
Right.
Okay, so we've got 4.
I think they're getting weird.
I'm a Gators quarterback.
Bud, will you look into the camera? Will you look into this camera? There he is. Okay. No, you're good. That's fine. All right, open your right hand. Open your right hand. You'll be given your.
This is the moment
grab
where I
it.
realize
There it is.
this video
All right.
is.
Now, we're gonna give you 1 spin around and 1 spin back. All right. And what we're gonna have you do is right in front of you, right here. Put the first pin in. What do we have?
All right.
We got Alabama.
Nice.
Okay, that's
Solid
nice
pick.
and easy.
Solid pick.
We got Alabama, his first playoff team. Second playoff team, Texas A&M. All right, unlikely, but Bud called it. Ooh, we've got
Oh wow. Okay, so we touched
it's
3.
more Virginia Tech, I would say. It's more Virginia Tech, USC, Virginia Tech, USC, Alabama, Texas A&M.
Texas
Nice.
A&M. Okay.
Bud called it now.
That's
all
not
right,
that bad.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Not bad at all.
hand the eye mask to Mr. Godfrey.
Okay.
Here we go.
Well,
Mr. Florida, Stephen Godfrey.
at least this won't be on the internet forever. Let me
Okay.
get these before I stand up.
Yup. Here we go.
All right, ready? Okay.
All right, we've got
Feels like nothing.
Louisville, number 1, Louisville
well, you know,
Cardinals. Yeah.
I've always loved Petrino.
Okay, here we go. We've got Washington. Okay.
Nice.
Seems
All right.
realistic. We got a
Louisville
second
twice.
Louisville. Let's move you over here. Okay, Oregon. Okie doke.
Dan's loving me. All right.
Here we go. And Oklahoma State. Oklahoma
Solid.
State, Louisville,
Nice.
Oregon, and Washington. Oregon and Washington both making the playoff.
You know,
Stephen
as
Godfrey.
the Pac-12 North does.
As the Pac-12 North, 2 teams in the same division making the playoff. Stephen Godfrey, Bud Elliott, thank you very much for your time. We're going to check in with each of you momentarily. We're going to go over some ACC Impact players later on in the show with you, Bud. But now it is time. Take a look. It's Alex Kirshner and his Big Ten predictions.
11 predictions for the 2017 Big Ten season. Ohio State will win the conference, and you can take that one to the bank. Michigan will beat Ohio State. I am totally kidding. Ty Johnson, look him up, will be the best running back in the league. But Saquon Barkley will be the Big Ten's Offensive Player of the Year. The best defender in the league, Michigan's Rashawn Gary. Trace McSorley is definitively better than JT Barrett, and I stand by that. Wisconsin wins the West again, and I'm certain of that. Northwestern will 100% be the second best team in the Big Ten.
West.
West. Related, the West is going to be pretty mediocre. Nebraska is finishing below 500. Put it on the board, make peace with it. And finally,
4 seconds.
no Big Ten team will fire its coach this year. Congrats, guys.
people. They're different humans, and they're just as great because now it is time to talk about the Big Ten with Richard Johnson and Jessica Smetana. It is Smetana.
Smetana.
Yes! Both of SB Nation, and we're going to have a good time because the Big Ten, whoo, I'm going to knock it over. Sorry, Xfinity.
Told you.
See, it's tough to do. It's tough to maintain balance. It's a quality water bottle for a quality company. Let's talk about the Big Ten because everybody looks at this conference as a matter of Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Penn State, and then a cliff of sorts. Is there a team that you feel like, and including those teams, Penn State made that leap last year, they ended up winning the conference. Is there a leap team in your mind that can, is it Michigan winning a division for the first time under Jim Harbaugh? Is it Ohio State not being shut out in a playoff game? What is that leap for you? We'll start with you, Jessica.
I think this season it's pretty interesting. I think Wisconsin has one of the...
Oh, you said that correctly. Wisconsin. I like that. Yeah.
The Midwesterner came right out.
Yeah, it did. They have a pretty easy schedule to start off the season until they play Michigan in week, I think, 11.
It's later on, yeah.
And then Minnesota, which is a tough rivalry game always. Those are really like the only two games that I think they're gonna struggle with.
Sure.
Other than that, I could see them doing 10-2, going back to the Big Ten championship, maybe.
Okay, so that's not a leap though. So you're saying leap? Are they winning the conference? Say it right now. Get on that Troy Fumagalli train.
Troy Fumagalli was named to the APL American First Team today.
There it is.
Yeah, I'll say Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Big Ten champion.
Whoa! I like it. I like it.
That's a hot take.
Jazz
Bold.
Peavy. He's here. Okay, Richard, what's your leap?
If it's anybody, I think it's Nebraska. I think Nebraska will
In
always.
which direction?
I think Nebraska. If there's a leap, Nebraska to the Big Ten championship game, potentially a little upset alert in the Big Ten championship game against maybe an Ohio State. I think with Nebraska, it's always a question of ceiling, and if their ceiling is their ceiling division champion or is their ceiling conference champion?
Okay.
Because if they're division champion good, I mean, I think you can say they can probably walk most of that side of the conference. And then it's really just them or Nebraska. But if their conference or if their division title good and that's their ceiling, I think you're going to have to worry with the Minnesotas, which is like a wild card team, Purdue, who may be opportunistic.
Iowa's defense should be tough.
Them.
Yeah.
Iowa's defense. It's those types of games that I think are going to kind of make or break where Nebraska goes.
So you must be high on Tanner Lee.
A little bit.
You must be high on Tanner. You must be high on Bob Diaco.
Handsome Bob.
Handsome Bob, great head of hair.
I think Diaco is a really good defensive coordinator.
Okay.
I'm also high on the momentum that Nebraska is gaining in the recruiting trail. The Cali-Nebraska connection that Mike Riley has been able to link a pipeline of California players coming to Nebraska.
Okay.
On the recruiting trail. That's big, and I think that that propels them and fills that team with some talent that otherwise wouldn't have.
Are you at all down on, and this goes for either of you, any of non-Wisconsin for Jessica, but Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State? Is there one, Michigan starting over in so many places, Ohio State starting over in a few places in the secondary, most notably offensive skill obviously is going to be a new look for them. And Penn State really doesn't lose a ton, but defensively they gave up some yardage last year. Any of those teams? Let's start with Richard this time.
For me, I think if it's out of those three, that kind of East triumvirate, it's Michigan. Because we're all kind of glossing over the fact that Michigan's going to kind of roll in some younger players on the 2 deep. I'm not talking about the 1 through 11 starters. Rashawn Gary I'm scared of Rashawn Gary.
Same.
But it's a situation of, it's kind of like a meta kind of playoff discussion. Take a team like Michigan State or a team like Washington that got in the playoff. They were good enough to get in the dance, but they didn't have the depth to win 1, much less 2 games against elite level teams. So drop that down to the Big Ten and say Michigan's got the talent and the depth to definitely contend for that division. You can't not say that. But in those games against Ohio State and Penn State, it's late. Do they have the depth to play and hang with and beat those elite teams? And that's what you have to do to win that side of the conference.
Jessica?
I would agree with Michigan, but just to be a contrarian, I guess I'm going to go with Ohio State. I'm not really sold on. I don't know. I've heard a lot of mixed feelings about JT Barrett. It is his 4th year, I believe. He's a nice veteran quarterback coming in, but who's he really throwing the ball to?
True. It's a lot of inexperience there. No Noah Brown. Yeah, fair enough. Richard, you ready to be our Vanna?
Oh, I am.
Okay, you have the natural Vanna look, the glow.
I'm much better looking.
Oh, this is true. Okay, so other side, Richard. We'll get you in the middle. Make sure you're framed up nice, beautifully. So Wisconsin, Jess's Big Ten champion, not in the top tier.
Not in the top tier. These are the 3 teams you would imagine to be in the top tier, the top tier of the Big Ten. Yeah.
Fair enough. And Wisconsin, certainly, quarterback's a big question with Hornibrook not looking as good as Bart Houston last year, stepping in. Defensively, Justin Wilcox is gone.
You're talking about quarterback. If anything, I'm a little bit weirdly worried about Penn State at quarterback. I look at Trace McSorley and I see Penn State's a team that loves the long ball. Does interception luck and does turnover luck bounce back the other way?
Right.
McSorley only threw 8 interceptions last year. You know, he threw 400 passes, but the way that they throw deep, do interceptions bite them in the you-know-what late season?
Also,
the you-know-what, Richard? Ooh,
this is a family
spicy.
program,
It is
Dan.
not a family program.
3 interceptions in the Rose Bowl, though, a game that
That's true.
a lot of pressure in there. So I agree with you on that.
And still a throw or 2 away from winning that game. But yes, all right, let's take a look at the next tier. I imagine Wisconsin's going to be a top tier 2, and they are up the bottom of tier 2.
Just them.
Yeah, they have a
Bottom and the
1-bedroom.
top of tier 2.
This is true. All right, let's take a look at tier 3. We've hit the Badgers enough. Okay, so here is the big middle class of the Big Ten. Clearly, of these teams, Jess, which do you think has the opportunity to jump up and contend at a higher level than their number would indicate?
Michigan State, because although Bill Connolly had them, he said this was their rebuilding year, even though last year they went 3-9, and that seemed like a rebuilding year. You're not, if you're Michigan State, you're not doing 2 3-9 seasons back to back. Like, there's no way they're gonna rebound from last season.
Yes.
I think again they're in a tougher division, playing against Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, but I think that they have at least 6 pretty easy wins in that schedule. I think they'll probably make a bowl game. I don't think they should be 11th. Maybe put them at like an 8 or a 7.
See, I have Northwestern, and I'll tell you why. They bring back a lot of people on both sides of the ball. I like the coaching staff. Kyle Field is weird. I don't care if you shake your head at me. They're going to beat somebody clearly more talented than they are, and I stand by it. Richard, do you have a team?
Yeah, well, I talked about Nebraska, obviously, last segment. But Iowa's really interesting, too.
Yeah.
I look at Iowa, not even in conference. Week 1, Wyoming. Josh Allen, draft Nick Darling. Let's say Iowa gets momentum going with like a 13-12 slugfest Kirk Ferentz win. And any other team other than Nebraska to kind of take that leap.
Do you know what the last name is of his offensive coordinator? It's Ferentz.
It's Ferentz
It's
as well.
Brian Ferentz. Okay, continue. 13-12 makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look at some of these teams. Minnesota, I just don't really know what to think about Minnesota because of the PJ Fleck factor. I think they're a little high here, honestly. I would kind of drop them down to the Maryland-Indiana range. And then, like, Maryland, I don't know who drew up the schedule for Maryland, but Maryland's schedule is literally almost the hardest schedule you could conceive in the Big Ten because of the side of the league that they're on and their cross-division draws. The only team that they miss is Nebraska.
And they go to Texas to start the season?
Yes, they go to Texas week 1.
Yeah, fair. Okay, or not so fair. And the final tier of the Big Ten. Take a quick look. You ready? I'm all in. I'm ready for Rutgers. This is a Rutgers town.
This is a Rutgers town.
Richard and I are ready. I don't know if Jess is.
Rutgers, the official college football team of Wake Up College Football. It's a college football show. Watch it.
Yep.
And yeah, New York's college football team. We are. All 3 of us are New Yorkers.
Absolutely.
That's true.
That works.
Yeah.
Jess, any strong thoughts? It's okay to say no.
Can you put Rutgers below 14?
Oh, how dare you. All
The
right.
Chicagoan in you doesn't have any strong Illinois takes?
Well, the Chicago in me remembers that Lovie Smith was a Bears coach a few years ago and has little to no faith in him as the head coach at Illinois.
Richard,
you shoehorn some Bears talk in there.
put on this beautiful Gators sleep mask.
This is wild, weirdly, I guess, comfortable.
Here we go. Not the first time Richard has worn a sleep mask on camera. No, that's probably true. Richard, hold out your right hand.
Did you guys take this from my childhood bedroom?
We did not. Let's give you a spin.
Oh, wow.
And then a spin back.
Right.
And then a spin. Now I'm just messing with you. Okay.
Big money, no wins.
Here we go. Right in front of you is the board. His first pick, Florida State.
Goodness gracious.
That's good. That's strong. Second pick, Wisconsin. Okay. Jess is all about that pick. Here we go. Next pick. Louisville, all right. 2 ACC teams in, and
Hashtag go ACC.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid. Listen, better than Bud's 3 Pac-12 team.
That's true.
Okay.
Ohio State and Wisconsin, I don't know about that, but otherwise not too bad.
All right. Mask is on, hand is out.
Mask on.
Turn this way, turn back, now this way, now turn back, now square up.
Am I square?
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh, another Florida State. Oh, Florida State doing well.
Florida State in the Florida mask.
Florida State, LSU,
Okay.
Here we go. Ooh.
Oh.
I think it's a Penn State
Okay.
and Oregon. Look at Oregon's doing real well in our playoff picture.
We have an outlier.
We do have an outlier. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Take it.
All right, and now with the Big Ten done with, we now turn to what I would argue is the best-looking member of the SB Nation college football team for Pac-12 predictions. It's our very own Dan Rubenstein. For the 2017 Pac-12 season. USC loses at Washington State after a short week after another road game. Cal is actually going to be pretty good. This is 2017? Oh, no. Delete this one. Washington's streak of scoring 70-plus points against Oregon is going to come to a close. Their streak of scoring 50-plus against Oregon, it's intact. They're going to hit 2. UCLA is going to open up the season and beat Texas A&M, and then they're going to lose 2 weeks later to Memphis. Body clocks, man. How about this? Stanford is going to win the Pac-12 North, and thus the Pac-12. It's just how it works. Oregon will win precisely 7 games this year, but Oregon running back ROYCE Freeman will obliterate somebody during the season, and we will all cheer merrily. Oregon State running back Ryan Nall will go over 200 yards twice in November. They have the Arizona schools in Cal and Oregon, but still, that's a thing. You should definitely learn Wazoo defensive lineman Hercules Mataafa's name. It's the respectful thing to do for somebody who owns so many offensive backfields. Arizona is going to win 10 games. I'm sorry, let me clarify. The state of Arizona will win a combined 10 games. Sorry. And finally, Utah is playing against Stanford on October 7th, and I tell you this because you're going to be able to see all that beef. Gotta tell you, I like that guy. There's something about him.
He's young, he's got promise.
I think
got
he's
spunk.
shady at best.
He is. There's an element to that.
I call it moxie.
He calls it moxie. All right, it is time to talk Pac-12 football, and the question I think that is probably the most relevant, or among the most relevant questions about the conference, is this conference not only top-heavy, I think it's hard to argue against that, but the most top-heavy conference, because with the Big Ten, we see 4 good teams. It looks like 3 or 4 really good teams, potentially in the SEC. ACC's got 3 or 4. Pac-12 has 2, maybe 3 teams that look to be really good, and then it seems like a pretty steep drop-off.
You can make an argument for 3 teams ending up in the playoff here without stretching.
3 Pac-12 teams in the playoff?
No. 3 of those 3
Oh, yeah. Okay.
candidates. Yeah. No.
But I think you can make the same argument for the Big Ten because I think Wisconsin, let's say Wisconsin goes undefeated, which I think is not a absurd leap to make.
Right.
You can make an argument for 3 kind of bona fide playoff contenders in the Pac-12 or in the Big Ten as well.
Yes.
Are we looking at the Pac-12 North now and seeing the Big Ten East a couple years from now?
I think so.
We have system in Stanford, right? Don't really replace a lot, recruit to exactly what you want, never really has a down year. Roughly the same concept at Washington going on right now as they sort of get exactly what Peterson wants, and you see what kind of talent they can bring into Seattle, okay? Oregon, TBD, right? In progress. Those are 3 national title contending programs in one division opposite USC. This actually lines up very similar to the way the Big Ten does.
Yeah, and both USC and Washington don't play each other. So even though USC doesn't have that bye week, the schedule shapes up pretty nicely, even with Texas and Notre Dame. It's a tough schedule because they don't have that bye week, but with Texas and Notre Dame there, we'll know a lot about USC in terms of what their ceiling is.
That schedule scares the heck out of me.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Like, it's okay. First and foremost, you play Texas the week after Stanford beats the heck out of you.
Yeah.
And that's week 2. They play Stanford week 2. I think Stanford's a year away from being like elite.
Yep.
Obviously very good, very talented. Like, I'm thinking playoff next year. But
not this year.
Not this year.
Okay.
Next year, 2018.
Still a physical 8-4 at worst.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Physical 8-4 that's going to knock you around.
Yeah.
And so USC plays Stanford, and then they play Texas, who's going to be opportunistic, looking to make a mark. Tom Herman is really good at playing that underdog roll-up. You learned that from Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
Et cetera. So, USC, it's not going to be this, like, traipsing cakewalk for USC.
Yeah.
And down the back end, you've got a Notre Dame team that can beat you, and then a UCLA team that's nearly 50% blue chips, which is the threshold you need to win a national championship.
Yeah.
I know Jim Mora has not been able to kind of put it all together, and Josh Rosen is yet to put it all together, but the talent is there at UCLA.
Jim Moore going to have another top 10 draft pick in a 7-5, 8-4 season.
Yeah, I mean he's got two of the most elite recruits we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years on that team.
This is the division. This is the conference. This is the division that everyone in coaching is talking about right now, simply because of the lack of progress in the South. Now that USC is functional again, is the USC that we expected, and not only that, they're organized, they're calm, they seem to be competent. This isn't the flashy USC of old. You've got Arizona, Arizona State, UCLA. They're all jobs in which you can recruit Los Angeles and recruit it well. The talent is there. They're all underperforming. I'm interested to see if any one of those coaching staffs can survive this year, because the South shapes up nicely. It becomes a 1 to 2 game season in conference play if you can get things going. If not, those are 3 attractive jobs when the season ends.
I think Colorado's going to win it again. No, I don't actually think that. But Colorado returns a ton on offense, and Utah has that very defined ceiling of they're probably not going to win the division, but they're probably going to beat somebody that's way better than their talent would indicate.
So you've got 2 teams in Utah and Colorado that you just referenced. What does Colorado not bring back from last season?
A lot on defense.
Jim
That's
Leavitt,
secondary and Jim Leavitt.
Most prominently. That is going to bite them in the you-know-what.
Yes.
And Utah's got Troy Williams, who was really good at quarterback last year and is what they want as a multiple guy. As a multiple guy that can run. I like him.
Okay.
Cooper Bateman, a transfer in.
Yeah.
Is Utah starting either of those young men at quarterback week 1? No, they are not. They are starting a true sophomore who has thrown 7 passes in his career. New offensive coordinator, comes from the high school ranks, had been mostly high school since like 2000.
Yep. An unknown quantity. Yeah.
Utah's going to be a little
All right, let's find me some playoff teams. Richard, you're going to guide me. Or actually, you know what? No, we're doing the tier.
Yeah.
We're going to do the tier first.
Cheers.
Godfrey, you are our Vanna for this segment. Richard, you're going to come sit next to me.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we're going to switch. Look how
What did I
mobile
do
we
to
are.
deserve this honor?
All right, let's take a look at the top tier. Do you believe Stanford should be in there? I believe Stanford should be in there.
I'm gonna go with yes. I know that they're not necessarily talent-wise maybe comparable to these guys in February, but I don't see what have they lost. What are they lacking this year going in? I mean,
quarterback's still a question with Keller Chris health.
Right, it's a question, but again, it's a year in that system. They haven't really done anything dramatic in terms of changing the coaching staff. I think they belong.
I would flip Washington and Stanford, honestly. I think I look at Washington
because of the schedule.
No, because of what they lost on the back end.
Okay,
like the back end of that defense, Sam Wuchong, Joe Mathis, who was one of my favorite college football players before he got hurt last season. But Baker, those are so talented players.
Sidney
on the back
Jones,
end. And I know that they are going to play with Azim Victor and Victor Villa. They have a really good level of talent in the front 7, and those guys can get after a backfield. But I don't love it as much as I love a more known quantity in Stanford. I think I'd flip the 2 of them.
All right, maybe the best linebacking core in the conference in Stanford.
Washington, the playoff team that no one's talking about.
True.
How are they underexposed right now? It's amazing.
Because you're just that far away in Seattle, people forget about it.
It's weird. It's a cliche, but it's true.
Yeah. Next tier, let's take a look. Stanford sits alone. That makes sense in the context of what we've already seen.
Definitely.
Let's take a look at the 3rd tier. This should be the middle class. It is the middle class.
Wow.
I don't know about Oregon at number 4.
I don't either.
UCLA, what are we doing with UCLA at 8?
3 offensive coordinators in 3 years.
Sell me on UCLA as consistent throughout conference play, though. To me, that's exactly where I'd put them.
I think it's just a level of talent. I think they can out-talent teams like Colorado. I would put them immediately above Utah and Colorado just on a talent.
UCLA and more have proven that they can out-unconsistent talent. That's basically been their calling card.
But if Rosen can put it together in his 3rd year, yeah, I'm going to take them over.
Feels like Brett Hundley Redux, man. It just does.
That's harsh. Godfrey.
Oregon at 4 is high only because it is year 1.
Right.
They want to make some fundamental wholesale changes. Defense, that's one story. Definitely, you can talk about that. Offense, they're going to do some things that, in terms of the run game, especially, that are going to be different, and it's going to require a little bit of growth and a little bit of pain. It's a tough schedule up front. Wyoming's nothing to laugh at.
On the road.
Go to Laramie, right, which is a very tough place to play. They get Nebraska. This just seems too high.
Yeah, Oregon. The one thing I will say about Oregon is I think Oregon was a little bit closer than 4 and 8 would tell you.
Oh, yeah.
They're closer than what 4 and 8 would tell you, but I don't think they're that close to tier 2. Washington State, I think, is one of the more interesting teams in the league because, yeah, they very much look like Mike Leach's footprint with Luke Falk really getting it going, but they run the ball more than, they run the ball more than people will give them credit for. They ran the ball about 100 times more in total rushes than a normal Mike Leach team does, and especially normal Mike Leach team at Washington.
And this is what he was hired for right here, to be in an ultra-talented division, ultra-talented conference, but yet still compensate for your deficiencies and be a very dangerous team to a couple of these premier programs. This reminds me of like Leach at Texas Tech. This is what they wanted him for.
Fair enough. And let's take a look at the bottom tier real quick. What do we got? We've got the Arizona schools and Cal. Of course, Cal overhauling everything with the coaching staff, letting Sonny Dykes go and building out with Justin Wilcox. The Arizona schools, 2 disappointing years. Arizona State completely snake-bitten, no pun intended, by injuries. And Arizona, same thing. And they're just, the talent level at Arizona is just nowhere where it needs to be a top 2 or 3 tier team right now in the Pac-12.
Nothing's really made sense for them in the last 2 years. I mean, they brought in Yates, the defensive coordinator from Boise State. It was disastrous. Neither one of these programs are producing and bringing talent into the state, and also recruiting Arizona, by the way they should be.
Right.
This is just going to be an interesting story for a while. I mean, Wilcox comes in. He's an alma mater type of guy, right? And that was the play. The Sonny Dykes marriage ended brutally, and they're broke. So it's just going to be, I mean, you've got to turn this into some sort of special Stanford-type project place really fast to be relevant.
I really like the staff, though.
I was just about to
it's
say
a great
that.
staff.
Cal did what I think you have to do with, especially a first-time head coach. You surround him with 2 good coordinators. You've got Marcus Tuiasosopo, who's a guy that knows the West Coast, and then you've got Tim DeRuyter, who's a guy that knows the Bay Area.
It's Bo Baldwin running the offense, but Tuiasosopo with the quarterbacks in the passing
as a passing game coordinator. So you've got two assistant coaches that can kind of, you don't want to say steer the ship, but at least kind of help Wilcox keep the thing in between the navigational buoys.
Steadying influences, yes. All right, I'm going to select my 4 teams. Somebody needs to guide me.
It's
going to get real weird real quickly.
I'll take it.
All right, these are me? Okay, here we go. Where am I going?
You are coming here.
Guide him.
Coming here.
Spin around.
Stop.
Around.
We're gonna spin. We're gonna spin. We're gonna spin.
Okay, here we go.
It's all you.
3.5 shades of gray.
Right, boom, right there. What do I have?
Go Gator.
Florida.
All right.
Very apt. See, he's playing to the room now.
Nice.
Well, let me get one more. Boise State.
Florida,
Still
Boise
orange and
State.
blue.
Of course.
What's the connection? Brent Peace?
Yeah.
There it is.
Wow.
Wow. Look at that.
Wow, we pay him the big
Kansas State.
I love this.
Okay, all right.
Love this.
Big on Bill Snyder, the Wizard. And back on Boise State. Let's try that again.
One more
Left
time.
hand.
Double Boise.
LSU. There it is.
LSU, Boise State, Kansas State, and Florida?
Yeah.
What's more improbable at this point, Florida making the playoff or a mid-major at all making the playoff?
Fair enough. All right.
Shots fired.
Wow.
Thank you very much to Stephen Godfrey and Richard Johnson. Now, please take a look for ACC predictions. Our very own Jess Smetana. She's going to be right about all of these.
These are my 2017 ACC predictions. NC State will beat a very good team, but lose to a very bad team. Notre Dame will throw a party after their 5th win of the season, and they will deserve it. We're going to learn way more about what really happened with WikiLeaks. 2 ACC players will be Heisman finalists, and one of them will be a defensive player. How about that? Dabo Swinney will come up with a new catchphrase that will go viral and be sold on a t-shirt. These predictions are too easy. By the end of 2017, Duke will have more 5-star basketball recruits than they will have ACC Coastal wins. Georgia Tech, I'm calling it right now, will run the triple option. There will be more ACC teams ranked in the top 25 at the end of the season than SEC teams. The conference winner's head coach will have Bo in his name. My money is on Steve Adazabo.
100% accurate. 100% accurate. Jess is never wrong. 2 people who, well, they're probably never wrong, but we're going to find out, and you're not going to hold him to it because you're going to forget about it. Alex Kirshner, Bud Elliott, we're talking ACC. And here is my question, because this is another, we talked about with the Pac-12, it being a top-heavy conference. If not Florida State, who brings back a ton of experience and talent all over the place, if not Clemson, who pretty much has it other than quarterback, who?
I want to answer NC State.
No, you want to.
I want to.
Yeah.
I know I can't.
Yeah.
No. The ACC, sort of like the Big Ten, if you're in the ACC Atlantic and you're not one of those blue bloods, I don't know if you call Louisville quite a blue blood, but if you're not Louisville, FSU, or Clemson, it's not going to happen for you, unfortunately.
After what Louisville did to Florida State last year, they're trending in that direction.
They are. They're getting there. So you have to pick a team from the Coastal. I think that Miami could do it. We have to see what their quarterback situation is. It's not currently thrilling to me.
Malik Rozier was the one to name the starter. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's an interesting division there. I think some people have been
defend
a little quiet
NC State
about
to me.
Give
me that NC State pick.
At NC State,
They'd have the best D-line in the Pac-12.
They have an amazing
They
defensive
would have the best D-line in the Pac-12.
They have an excellent defensive line. Bradley Chubb, Davius Street, one of the better athletes in the entire country. I like the quarterback, Ryan Finley. I don't know how you couldn't love Jalen Samuels.
Yep, of course.
And, you know, they're going to move the ball, I think, pretty effectively. They did lose a bit, but yeah, it sucks that they're in the ACC Atlantic.
Yeah, secondary.
I am with you, Wolfpack fans. You deserve better than you're going to get this year.
But if not Florida State or Clemson, who?
Alex is right with the Miami pick.
Okay.
I mean, because look, half the battle is getting there.
Yeah.
Right? And Miami, I think, is the clear-cut favorite in the Coastal. Tech just named a freshman quarterback. UNC lost a ton. I mean, do you really buy Georgia Tech again? I guess this could be one of those years where you know, the Yellow Jackets do something. But most of the battle is just getting there and then, you know, being able to upset Florida State or Clemson in the Atlantic Division title game. The other issue with Louisville, they also lost a lot on defense. People seem to start to figure out Lamar Jackson and that offense some last year. They exposed the offensive line.
Right.
If you look at teams down the stretch, they blitzed them a lot. And Louisville did not have very good answers for pressure. Previously, I think a lot of people were scared to blitz Lamar Jackson because of his scrambling ability, which, hey, it makes sense, but at some point you take the risk. They did it. LSU did it. Kentucky did it some. Houston did it a ton.
Forced mistakes, yeah.
Right. They also lost their defensive coordinator to Mississippi State and then took Mississippi State's defensive coordinator. So
Right.
who knows what's going to happen with that?
Right, and Mississippi State's defense not exactly turning the world on fire last year with Peter Sermon. Miami, though, do they have the #1 recruiting class in the country still? It's right there if they don't.
No, who is it now?
They're just off right now. It's Ohio State.
It's Ohio State took that place.
1-2.
So certainly there's an energy to Miami football right now. Mark Richt recruiting extraordinarily well, made some really good hires. So that defense obviously is going to lead Miami with Craig Kulangowski, maybe the best defensive line coach in the conference, and Manny Diaz certainly is a very good defensive coordinator. Offensively, do they have the weapons to complement?
I like Amon Richards at receiver a lot. I don't know who's going to be their second receiver, but they have a couple speedy freshmen. Maybe they could compensate. The offensive line, I think, will be better than in previous years. Mark Walton is a good back. You know, I don't know. We'll see if he becomes a superstar back, but I think he's one of the better ones they've had in a while. If you're in the Coastal, you don't need that much star talent to win the Coastal. I know Miami's never won it, but at the same point, you know, that's they had Al Golden as head coach, which is kind of a detriment.
Right.
Can they win the league? If they get there, they just got to pull one upset.
Yep.
It's happened before.
And
Fair enough.
There are a lot of balls in the air there for Miami. I mean, obviously, you lose Brad Kai, you lose David Njoku, a couple of other really important players for that team.
Yep.
But that's the story around the Coastal. You know, Pitt loses James Conner and its offensive coordinator, Matt Canada. Virginia Tech loses Gerard Evans, somewhat perplexingly to the NFL.
Yep.
And it's just, you know, North Carolina loses a ton, and I think we all kind of agree they're due for a rebuilding year at this point. So, you know, you might get pause and think they've got too many new guys to do it, but so does the entire competition. So some team that might come from relatively nowhere is going to have a chance to do it.
Let's look at the competition. Let's go to the screen. Alex, you're going to be our Vanna, a natural Vanna. Other side, Alex Kirshner. There he is. It's so natural. So Florida State and Clemson are right there. Certainly Florida State probably has the edge because of how much they return, most notably quarterback.
I think so. You know, obviously DeAndre Francois last year was a little uneven, but I think you look, you know, maybe he had a bad 29 and a half minutes to start his season against Ole Miss last year. And then he was one of the best 20 or so quarterbacks in the country for the rest of the year. So I think that, you know, while he's got a bit to prove, he's got a lot less to prove than Kelly Bryant or whoever winds up being the long-term.
That's my question. But is Clemson good enough around quarterback on both sides of the ball to win with average quarterback play?
I think they could be. I mean, look, they might be favored over Florida State in that matchup, but they also have to go to Louisville the week after they play Auburn, which is a very difficult.
Right, their schedule's ridiculous.
Yeah, the schedule's tough. They don't get Miami out of the Coastal, which helps their case. Kelly Bryant, probably a caretaker for a year. They did sign Hunter Johnson. We all know they have Trevor Lawrence coming in the 2018 class. You can read about that on SB Nation.
That's 10 stars.
There it is.
10 stars with the quarterback.
10 stars,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. So eventually the guys with the true talent are going to take over, but can he be good enough in the interim? Maybe so. I guess we'll have to see with that. That defense is nasty. That's probably the most talented defensive line in the country. Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, the kid at defensive end who they have now they like a lot. That's going to be a good race for #1.
Are there incoming freshmen for either one of those teams, as deep and talented as they are, that are going to make an impact?
Cam Akers, a running back for Florida State. I mean, I think he'll get at least 100 carries this year and should have a pretty nice year.
Okay. Let's take a look at Tier 2. Here it is. Louisville stands alone. They've got a lot to, it's going to be a new defense with Peter Sermon. Offensively, they lose a couple key receivers. And Lamar Jackson, certainly with the highest upside, I would say, of any returning quarterback in a sort of dual way. I think that's fair to say. So that still renders them pretty unpredictable.
They're extremely unpredictable. And it's not that they don't have flaws. Lamar Jackson gets sacked a bunch. Lamar Jackson throws a bunch of incompletions.
Right.
the counterpoint there, he is Lamar Jackson.
Right. He can turn 3rd and 12s into
Things are
1st
gonna
and
work
10.
out. Yeah.
I also want to see Louisville respond to adversity.
Right.
Right. They're kind of a snowball team. When things are going good, they pour it on. They put 63 on Florida State. They could have put 80 if Petrino had not called the dogs off. But when things started going bad, you saw fighting on the sidelines. You saw guys not reacting well. They didn't counterpunch very well. They didn't fight back. And if they're going to take that next step, you're going to get down sometimes. And they did counterpunch Clemson fairly well.
Yes.
You have to give them credit for that. But some of those other games, they seem to just totally fall apart.
All right, let's take a look at the next tier. Obviously, Miami is going to be on this tier, which we've hit a lot. Below NC State, which has certainly more, there's more to know about when it comes to the quarterback position. But Virginia Tech right there. Pitt is an unknown quantity because of Max Brown and another new quarterback and another new offensive coordinator. North Carolina starting all over again pretty much on offense. Georgia Tech is always an unknown commodity. But let's look at Virginia Tech at number 6. What is their ceiling in this conference if quarterback play is not bad?
I think they hit it last year. You know,
That's what it is, winning the division, yeah.
You give Clemson or Florida State or Louisville a minor inconvenience. You know, that game was fairly close. I think they were kind of at arm's length, 14 points down for most of it. There's no way that it gets better than that, at least right now. And I think very highly of Justin Fuente and the job that he's done there. But there's no way. There's too much stacked against them. Particularly in the other division, but it's not like it's going to be easy to come out of the Coastal either.
And we've seen what the ACC looks like when Virginia Tech is its best team.
Yes.
Nobody wants to watch that product. It was terrible. It was a decade ago, and it wasn't good. If they're your 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th best team in the league, that's a really strong
You're in a healthy
league.
place, yeah.
If they're your 1, 2, 3, that's kind of iffy. I will say
Unless they got Mike Vick.
Well, sure, okay. If
He's
you
not
get a
coming
Mike
back.
Vick,
If you get a special player at quarterback, yeah.
NC State and Miami, I'm a little surprised you're in Tier 3. I don't think there's that big of a gap between them and Louisville. I would have had them up in Tier 2 along with Louisville.
Fair enough.
I think like the gap between Louisville and NC State is a lot closer than, say, NC State to UNC this year.
Okay.
I think that's fair. I also think life ain't fair. NC State may well be a better team than Miami this year and has almost no chance to win this division.
This is true. And the final tier, Syracuse in year 2 with Dino Babers. Duke is going to be healthy with a promising quarterback. That's the word I'm using a lot. Wake Forest, the defense returns a lot of potential stars, at least within the conference. Boston College and UVA. UVA still struggling on at least offense. The defense could make some noise. What jumps out to you, Alex?
I'm excited to see how Wake Forest does without having its plays all about the conference.
It makes it more difficult.
Be a good asset for them.
Yep.
Don't want to talk about Boston College. Family show here.
Let's talk about Harold Landry, though.
Harold Landry is outstanding.
He's stupid good.
No, he's great.
Yeah.
And he is a player who deserves a lot more attention than he's going to ever get being in that program. Unfortunately, Boston College's offense just can't, even approximate pulling the weight that would get him the national recognition he deserves. But he might be the best defensive end in the whole country.
Yeah, Bud, what jumps out?
This league has the most defensive talent in the country, I think. Now, their offenses, I think, are going to be not very good this year, kind of tough to watch. Does Syracuse have a defense? Because if everybody in this league is playing defense week in and week out, and you can't get any stops, I don't care what kind of offense you run, you're going to be more towards the bottom of this.
Right.
The other thing is, can you name the quarterbacks for these teams? Because I could name Duke's.
Kurt Benkert for Virginia.
Okay.
Eric Dungy for Syracuse.
Right.
No.
Right.
No.
Duke's the only one out of this group that has a legitimately good quarterback, I think. So they may have a chance to rise up.
Yeah. No, this is almost looking like a poor man's version of what the SEC has looked like in the past. A ton of defensive talent, too many questions at quarterback to really feel good about the conference as a deep one.
Because they're all in the NFL.
Yeah,
I mean, Trubisky, Watson, all those guys left.
Yeah, Brad Kaya, Gerard Evans. They said they make
Peterman.
Decision-making not great for a quarterback position. All right, Alex, here we go. Let's figure out your Bud. Spin him around. Right. Really, don't take it easy on him. Really get him dizzy.
Yeah, I want to.
Here we go. All right. I'll get these magnets off for you. Put out your right hand, Alex. No, not that way. Other way.
Alex.
No. Here we go.
Right.
No, here we go. Here we go. Okay, hold those.
All right, we're spinning.
Here we go.
All right, spin around.
Spin him.
Okay.
He's a happy boy.
Let's get squared up.
Happy magnet boy, Alex Kirshner. All right, you're faced up. Auburn. Okay, first Auburn pick. Wisconsin
with a shimmy.
Okay. Don't knock the board over. Okay, Louisville.
Is that Louisville or NC
Very
State?
I think
he
it's
likes
Louisville.
NC State.
I know, but he's gone Louisville.
Okay.
And USC.
USC.
You know what? This one is probably our closest one to realistic.
This might be the only one you could actually get Vegas to give you odds on.
Yes, you could actually get odds on this one.
No, I feel pretty good about that.
All right, I feel good about it too. If you guys feel good about it,
there you go.
That is our ACC preview, and we are about to get into the Big 12. But to make his predictions on the Big 12 is our very own. You've seen him so much today, Richard Johnson.
Here are my bold predictions for the 2017 Big 12 season. Virginia Tech, West Virginia is going to be the best game of Week 1. Texas will actually sell out a home football game. I know, right? Mike Gundy's mullet will continue to look better than whatever you have on your head, but not necessarily better than what I have on mine. Oklahoma assistant head coach Ruffin McNeil will prove to be the most important assistant coaching hire that was made this offseason. You didn't even know they hired him, did you? Kansas State head coach Bill Snyder will continue to kick cancer's ass, and that's whether this is his last year coaching or not. The Big 12 championship game will either be a stroke of marketing genius or a complete waste. Absolutely nothing in between. The Big 12 gets a team into the playoff? I don't know. Kansas will have the 3rd best recruiting class in the conference when it's all said and done in February. Mark it down. Texas Tech will give up fewer than 500 yards per game on defense for the first time since. I'm sorry. You gotta cut it. I cannot give that line with a straight face. It's just not true. And finally, Iowa State will play at least 12 football games this fall.
We are back, and we are back again with Richard. You saw him on screen. Here he is again, once again, Richard Johnson, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome to the stage Ty Hildenbrandt of the Solid Verbal Podcast. And where do you work during the day?
I'm not sure we can talk about that in this medium, Dan.
This is CFB Twitter like royalty. I am basking in the glow right now.
We're not used to having a third man here.
This is strange.
Third wheel's a little different for us.
Okay, so let's talk 12 wheels. Let's talk about the Big 12.
that was good.
But there's only 10 wheels because there's only 10 teams. Here's my question. I think this is the overarching question with what Oklahoma returns, especially at quarterback. A lot of interesting pieces on defense. Oklahoma State has a good quarterback of their own. Does the conference, now that they have a championship game, which God knows why, does it go through Bedlam? We'll start with you, Ty.
It could go through Bedlam. It also could go through the Red River Shootout.
Okay.
Could go through about 4 other games in the Big 12. That's part of the problem, I think, with trying to figure out where the Big 12 goes this year. As a whole, the conference rises. I think you've got a lot more parity than you did a year ago. And for that reason,
Where's that coming from?
Well, I think you've got an influx of coaching talent with guys like Tom Herman. Some teams at the bottom are a year older. They've got a little bit more depth. Even Kansas won't be as bad as they were a year ago. So just as a whole, it might not be the top conference in college football, but I think parity from top to bottom is a lot better than it was a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago. So now we're at the spot where I think there are a handful of games that could really decide where this thing ends up going. They could cannibalize themselves.
Yeah, I think if anything else, I think the conference has shown in its scheduling patterns that they're kind of like putting the chips on Bedlam. If you look at the stretch of like just the whole game calendar between October 28th and Veterans Day, November 11th, that's where all those big hitter games in every league are. That's where LSU, Alabama is. That's where Clemson, Florida State is. That's where Bedlam is. Yeah. And that's where Stanford and Washington is. So and Ohio State and Penn State. So every league is kind of positioning their big hitter game to be in that, not mid-season, but not late
the
season
shadow
stretch.
of Halloween.
So, but they moved the game to avoid Bedlam going back to back, right? Which it would have done last year. Bedlam would have been the final game of the season and the Big 12 championship game the last 2 years. So, if nothing else, the Big 12 is kind of saying, "Hey, Bedlam's going to be a pretty big deal."
Okay, fair enough. Ty, do you want to be our Vanna? You want to be our Vanna? Richard, slide over. We're going to look at the tiers because we only have 10 teams. We didn't mention Kansas State, but we will now. One of the other intriguing teams, West Virginia, an intriguing team. Does another team deserve to be on tier 1 with Oklahoma? Ty, we'll start with you.
I don't think so. Some would call Oklahoma a bit of a crimson and cream machine.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Advertising for the kids out there.
Okie doke.
They've got an unquestionably outstanding offensive line. They've got a really good back 7 of their defense. Yep. The only real question I have for them is how quickly they take to whatever Lincoln Riley decides to do differently and how they replace 4,600 total yards of misproduction from Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon, Dede Westbrook.
Yeah, I think that with Oklahoma, obviously, when you make that big of a shakeup in June, you want continuity.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what they have with Lincoln Riley. But a lot of those Big 12 predictions that I had in that preview video were a little tongue-in-cheek. The Ruffin McNeil's hire is not tongue-in-cheek. That is a big deal for a guy like Lincoln Riley.
It's a stabilizing force, yeah.
Exactly. And so as Lincoln Riley and as Oklahoma navigates the post-Bob Stoops era, you need someone to kind of help you out to kind of learn the ropes of being a head coach and how to manage a team and manage a coaching staff.
Yeah.
That's what I think Ruffin brings to the table for Lincoln. And I don't have any qualms with Oklahoma and just Oklahoma being in Tier 1.
I would say in a good or disappointing way, it probably won't be fair to judge this Oklahoma team in terms of what Lincoln Riley's doing, because this is not Lincoln Riley's team.
Exactly.
It is the previous staff. It is Lincoln Riley thrown in sort of last second.
And for the long term, Ruffin McNeil helps out for whatever they're going to be in 2018, 19, 20. But right now it's 2017.
All right, here's Tier 2. This is where we see maybe the biggest class of teams that are dangerous but have maybe a deficiency. Oklahoma State has to replace a lot on defense. Texas is just brand new everywhere as they shift to a new defense. Kansas State, we know what to expect from Kansas State, but the talent ceiling is lower. And TCU, year to year, we just have no idea what to expect. And Kenny Hill certainly looks like he could be okay, but not much better than that.
How big of a gap do you think there is between Tier 1 and Tier 2 here? Because I think that's part of why
not huge.
I'm intrigued by the Big 12 this year.
I think it's pretty slim.
I could make a case that consistently Oklahoma is better than all these teams. I don't think anyone here would argue that.
Right.
Could any of these teams beat Oklahoma? I could see that happening.
Well, yeah, I think if anything, there needs to be kind of like a tier 2.5 between like Oklahoma State and everybody else. Oklahoma State's lost 4 conference games in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Oklahoma and Baylor, both years.
Right.
I think you can safely assume that Oklahoma State should be able to handle Baylor this season, given what Baylor will be bringing back to the table. But, what is Oklahoma State going to do against Oklahoma? It's Oklahoma State written right under, and then everybody else.
Kansas State returns a ton. We certainly know what they're capable of when they're healthy and when they're operating like Bill Snyder wants to operate, which is to say slowly and ferociously. And if we look at Tier 3, there's a team that has been in the second tier these past couple years, and that's West Virginia. And Baylor's obviously been there, but they have overhauled everything. Ty, you are not high on West Virginia.
I'm out.
Richard,
I am actually.
Why are you high on West Virginia?
I think I'm high on West Virginia because I've seen Will Greer at his best.
Okay.
I've seen Will Greer at his best, and I believe in Jake Spavital.
Okay.
And I think that, especially like my prediction for Week 1, West Virginia, Virginia Tech probably being the most exciting and best game of the weekend. I really think West Virginia has a really big chance to spring the upset there because of the marriage of Greer and Spavital. I think it can go in that game. I think Virginia Tech showed last season that it can be shelled on defense. Now, it was elite offenses doing the shelling, but I think that West Virginia, with the nature of Week 1 being just a total crapshoot anyway, I think West Virginia is a team that can really maybe stun somebody in Week 1.
Okay.
So the handful of games that we saw from Will Greer, combined with the fact that we've pretty much got a full and total reboot going on at West Virginia, is enough to convince you.
Of them being able to get Virginia Tech Week 1? Absolutely.
Just playing devil's advocate. I am not buying in because I just feel like there's too much turnover. I still don't know what we have with Will Greer. He looked great in a few games at Florida, but new team, new system, different year altogether. Sometimes that can play tricks on people. So I'm rooting for West Virginia. I'm just not buying into that extent.
Fair enough. Let's look at the bottom 2 teams. It should be Kansas and Texas Tech, which is such a bummer to see Texas Tech this low, not because I have any sort of investment in the Red Raiders, but just because they've put up so much offense. They have done something in an excellent college football way, an excellent Power 5 way, and they still can't get out of their own way on the other side of the ball. Is there any hope for either one of these teams jumping out of this basement?
Wow. I mean, I probably feel better about Texas Tech being that team, if only because they consistently have offense.
Right.
If you're talking to me,
so they win 55-52 instead of losing.
Exactly. If you're talking,
that's just how the ball bounces.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're talking 2 years from now, then maybe Kansas is the answer because it seems like they're at least trying to build some forward momentum.
Richard's very high on this Kansas Jayhawks.
The problem, though, ultimately with Texas Tech is that they've been like 8, 9, 7, 6 for the last couple of years running now. It doesn't feel like they're doing anything other than treading water, and that's part of the reason why I think Cliff Kingsbury is a bit on the hot seat if things don't turn around in a hurry.
Okay, fair enough. And finally, Ty, let's put you in a mask.
Oh,
let's put you in a mask. Let's get him situated.
I don't see Notre Dame. Oh, Notre Dame is on the board. Okay.
It's okay. We're
one
gonna
I could get wrong.
Okay. Here we go. Ty is going to select his 4 playoff teams. That's weird that you immediately did that with your hands, but I'm going to stand by it. Do you feel it right ahead of you?
I see with my senses,
Okay.
that's right.
So, whoop, we lost one.
We're down one.
Here we go. Hold these. Richard's going to give you a 4th.
Okay.
Here we go. We're going to get you squared up. Here we go. Ty. First playoff team. Ty's going with Notre Dame.
No way.
Ty goes with Notre Dame. Immediately correct. Here we go. Second playoff team. He's going Florida Gators. All right. We've got 2 alma maters. No, not alma maters.
Zaire Bowl.
Here we go.
Zaire
Penn State is the alma mater. Penn State, Notre Dame, Florida. Here we go. The final team is USC.
Is this the most plausible playoff anybody's blindly come up with?
No, because there's the Notre Dame and Florida part. There's Notre Dame and Florida in
All right, so
there,
you got
so
jokes. All right.
it's probably not going to be. But you know what? Now that we do have a Notre Dame selection, though, there is one Power 5 team that we have not discussed. I know Ty is always willing to discuss Notre Dame. Richard, do you want to stick around and discuss Notre Dame with us?
Absolutely not. I will say that 4 teams in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Notre Dame in Ty's college football playoff. Notre Dame coming off a 4-8 season last year. I'm not sure.
Oh,
if
wow.
You have.
See, I wasn't aware of the 4-8. I'm glad.
All right, let's just bring, you know what,
Good for you, Ty.
let's bring Jess in. Richard, thank you very much for your service. It's much appreciated. This show is so Notre Dame right now that it hurts.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm being told, actually, that we are out of time. We are, unfortunately, no, I am not out of time. But here's my question with Notre Dame. What has happened since last year's clearly disappointing year? I say that as somebody who roots for a 4-8 team or rooted for a 4-8 team last year. What is it that has happened that has you confident that disappointment won't happen again? We'll start with you, Jess.
So much has happened.
Okay, catch me up.
We have a new quarterback. I don't know if you heard about Brandon Wimbush, but it's kind of a big deal. Brian Kelly.
I want you to talk about this like Stefan from SNL. Notre Dame has everything. A new quarterback named Brandon. Yeah.
Brian Kelly does yoga now.
Yeah, that's true.
No, just kidding. He actually, I think.
Yeah,
He really does do yoga,
yeah.
But new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator, a lot of returning talent. We got probably the best O-line in the country with Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey. I think it's been a pretty exciting offseason.
I like the ownership.
This is good expectation level here.
Okay. So we've got an offensive line that we are feeling good about. We've got a quarterback we feel good about.
Oh, this is a we because I consider myself part of the team.
So, yes,
yeah,
Jess is part of the team.
I'm a we person when it comes to Notre Dame.
Ty, what has you confident since the 4-8 season that this Notre Dame team is going to add multiple games to the win column?
Well, first off, we're seeing Brian Kelly talk about himself like he's a failed contestant on The Bachelor.
Yeah.
And everything you hear is a bit contrite and a bit
I'm gonna work on me.
self-aware. I feel like he understands, and we saw from his assistant hires that he understood that there was a bit of a deficiency. One of those hires was out of necessity, going out and getting Chip Long to be offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
The other was also out of necessity, but for an altogether different reason when they got Mike Elko. So I think those 2 hires should, reinvigorate. I can't even say it with a straight face.
I know.
It should reinvigorate the program to some degree to come in there with a fresh perspective. Also, they were really young on defense a year ago. I think that should be improved. They got better as the year wore on last year. And there's still a ton of offensive talent. So presumably if Brandon Wimbush doesn't come in and lay a goose egg, which hopefully will not happen from a Notre Dame standpoint, I think Notre Dame will be just fine.
Okay, and we will know pretty early on, at least have a concept of the progression, because they have Georgia early on in the season. What games scare you? How do you evaluate their schedule?
I'm a little bit worried about that Miami game, as I think most people are, just because
that'll be a good line matchup, though.
Miami was one of the 4 teams we beat last season.
That's true.
Miami
People
was a team that Notre Dame did beat last year. However, Miami's got a very good defense this year. I say Miami, if only because some of the other options are clearly just gimmies, right?
Yeah.
You know that USC, you know that Stanford.
I like the choice of the word option with Navy on the schedule.
Thank you, Dan. But you know teams like Georgia, you know teams right off the bat just by looking at the schedule. They jump off the page as potential losses for Notre Dame. Miami could be one that I think falls into that toss-up territory. Given the strength of their defense, I think that's a worrisome game for Notre Dame.
Jess, what jumps out to you?
I would agree with that. I also think this might sound a little ridiculous, but coming off that Georgia game, we're playing Boston College in Boston. Boston College, not a college football powerhouse, but they do have one of the better defenses and defensive, high pressure schemes.
That's true. They've given some offenses trouble.
And with the, like first year, whatever you want to call him, quarterback coming in. That's going to be his third start of the season. That's a little kind of scary just because we're coming off a big game. And Boston College always plays us tough, and they're a rival. So every team on Notre Dame's schedule is like technically a rival.
Fair enough. That's all I have in me to talk about Notre Dame. That is, I feel dehydrated because of all that Notre Dame talk. But thank you very much.
You can leave. We'll keep talking about Notre Dame.
That is not an option. Thank you very much to Ty and to Jess, and of course to Richard Johnson, Stephen Godfrey. Who else we had? Bud Elliott was terrific. Alex Kirshner, everybody back there, everybody for watching. My name is Dan. Did I forget anybody? I really hope I didn't forget anybody. I'm looking at my list. Ty and Jess, obviously. Thank you very much to everybody that participated and watched. This has been the 2017 College Football Preview presented by Xfinity Mobile. We will see you soon. All sorts of great content coming this season. Have a good day.